Why did you decide to detransition? Was there something that happened? I don't know that much about gender dysphoria, to tell you the truth.
I don't either.
Nobody does.
That's what I'm trying to say, is nobody does. If we knew what gender identity disorder was, we wouldn't be doing surgery on kids.
Chris Beck, welcome to my podcast. I'm glad to have you on here.
Thank you.
Can we start off by you giving a brief background about who you are and what it is you do and a little bit about what you've been through?
Okay. Well, my name is Chris Beck. I'm known as a Navy SEAL. Originally I was known as a Navy SEAL, and that was about it. And then after I retired in 2011, I started feeling things that made me want to change my life a bit. And then in 2013, 14 time frame, I came out as transgender. And then I lived that way for, quite a while. And I say I lived that way as a past tense, which isn't really proper, because I think that's the misconception a lot of people don't know, is that transgender it's not transgender, it's gender identity disorder. And that's something that I had, and I think a lot of folks have it, except that mine was possibly a little bit extreme because of whatever reasons. And then I also, I was retired, and I was at that point in my life where I was like, I don't care anymore, And then I came out as Kristen, and they made a movie on CNN about it. And then everything just went off the hook after that. I went on a lot of news programs, and all kinds of things started happening. It was like the floodgates opened up as soon as you go on one episode. It just goes wild. And now in this year, I announced publicly that I was detransitioning. Now I was already, the word detransition, I'd love to talk about that also, because that's just a ridiculous word. But I started trying to go back to who I really was. I tried to figure out what was wrong, and I had to do this all on my own because I had no help doing this. I asked for psychological help, in different ways, and I almost felt like the psychological community is on a track, and I don't understand it. And so anything that was wrong with me, they would just keep going back to transgender or saying something about identity and all this stuff. And so that's when I started really digging into like Carl Jung and a whole bunch of other books, and Jordan Peterson, as a matter of fact. I didn't know you were his daughter when I first said yes to your podcast. But
that's cool.
Well, that's a whole nother story. I feel that I had to do it on my own because I didn't have any help, because it seemed like it was propaganda. The problem I see right now is, and it's the same problem we have with everything in life, it becomes political. It becomes binary. Actually binary is not that big of a deal when you're talking about people, but that's another little joke in there. But I would just say the Hegelian dialectic, it's like they always want us to fight. They want us to be in this camp and that camp. If you're in the middle, they get mad at you, and then they try to force you on one end or the other. And I've always had a problem with that, because I'm very much in the middle. I'm extremely conservative on some points. I'm extremely liberal on other points. And I think most people are like that. But I got pushed into these camps, and I was like, I don't want to be in those camps. And so I started going towards the middle, and then both sides hate me. And then I'm like, well, I'd rather be hated by both sides and be myself and be real, be truthfully me, which is very much in the middle. I'm not Kristen, I'm not Christopher, call me Chief, because then you're getting rid of all that baggage that I had before and all that baggage I had after. And all I'm saying is my potential. Look at me for what I am and who I am, not by labels or not by the clothing I wear. Don't judge me on my fashion, because my fashion sense is flannel shirts. If you look at what I've done almost every interview, and it's the same flannel. I own like 3 of them, and I'll never wear anything else on an interview. And I'm actually thinking about dyeing them all black, because the same shirts, but just dye them black like Johnny Cash, because I'm so tired of all this. I'm waiting for something to it's going to blow up. And that's the part that people do not understand, is that they're lighting fires everywhere on both sides of the aisle. So you have the right lighting fires on the left, and the left lighting fires on the right. And you don't think that's affecting people? So they're taking all of these issues and they're making them political, and they're making them egotistical. They're making them into money, and money's the biggest problem. But I mean, I could go into this stuff for you forever, but I want you to know like my stance and where I am. I had gender dysphoria. And I think gender dysphoria is something that if you're transgender, you all have gender dysphoria. You don't have transgender. Transgender is like the end result of the high level gender dysphoria, is the gender identity disorder. And it's something that you can work with. Now, for me, most of the life, I was between, and I'm going to do a 100 scale. I was like maybe a 10, I was a 15, I was a 20. Sometimes when I was like anxiety or I was stressed out or whatever, I might be like a 20 with identity going, there's something going on. But then when I retired, it was pegging way up there. I was like maybe 60% because I was just fed up with everything. And I also went through a lot too in my life that just made me start hating myself, which is kind of what all of the universities seem to be teaching really well these days, is how to hate each other. And which I quit school. I was doing my master's in mental health counseling, and I 100% quit school over a philosophical argument with a teacher. They were teaching CRT, this professor, and professor started out as a third grade teacher and now is a professor in college, and it was still third grade levels crap. They're teaching this hatred against the entire white race. Every time she would say anything about white people, it was like white people, and it was like, yeah, but I'm white and I don't hate myself. Well, I do sometimes. I mean, I do dumb stuff. Don't we all,
Yeah.
But I don't generally hate myself. I don't hate white people. I don't hate black people. I don't hate Asian people. I don't hate anybody, flat out. That's ridiculous. Who in this world, I doubt anyone truly hates everyone from an entire sect of people, and hate a label or hate something that I'm born with. I hate you because you have brown eyes. Well, I hate you because you have blue eyes. It's the same thing. I'm born how I am, and you're going to hate me because I was born? Come on. But that's what they're teaching at universities. So when they started really hammering that, I wrote a paper. It was an opinion paper. And my opinion is my opinion. And if you say it's an opinion paper, how are you going to grade me and give me a 50% out of 100 for my opinion?
Yep.
It was a punishment because I challenged the professor. Because I said, this is wrong. I started bringing up, and I talked about this on another podcast a little while ago. It was like Great Zimbabwe and all the kings and queens of Africa and these greatness that happened throughout the centuries on this continent. And the birth, the cradle of civilization. And I could go on and on and on. And this is stuff that I was writing in my paper saying that there's no reason for, people to hate each other. Look how great the greatness, and we've had greatness, and everybody's had greatness. Plus we've had failures. And we've had mess ups, we've done stuff wrong as nations, as peoples. Every people's done stuff wrong. So if you want to start hating people, then hate all people. You can't just pick one group of people that in history did one thing. And what, slavery in America was like 70 or 80 years total, if you really look at the numbers. When we were done, 1776, and when it was over, it was barely a blink of an eye in all of mankind's history. You
I'm
want to
sure
talk about
your teacher
this
didn't
kind of
like
stuff
that.
really bothers me, But that's why I quit college. When I started seeing this hatred against people, I started seeing the same thing in the trans community about the labels and about hatred and about setting these labels up for failure. And I don't want to hate myself. And, so I started looking at all of this. And I put this entire ideology into the same group as CRT, that they're purposely separating people for whatever reasons and causing discontent and causing hate by labels, by mental health issues that are exacerbated into surgery, which we don't do for anorexia or any other, thing that's bodily issued, eating disorders. I don't see you doing teenagers surgeries for somebody who has a eating disorder. And I can go through this forever, but so that's a huge explanation of me, but you just have to understand that all of this happened. I would have been silent. I was already out of transgender 100% a while ago, and I understood for me, it was gender identity disorder. It was a mental health issue, which I can deal with. I can work on that. But if it's something that you tell me that's permanent, that's something that we're all born like this, we'll all do this, and there's only one way to fix it. Well, that's bunk, because you're putting a blanket solution on every human being that shows up saying anything about being a tomboy or, hey, I like to wear, freely and soft things sometimes. It makes me comfortable. Oh, you're transgender. It's like, come on. The whole thing has just been blown out of the water so far that I had to start speaking out. I wanted to be silent. I never wanted to come on these programs. I did that one with Robbie Starbuck, which, great people, and they did a good job. And then I went on Tucker Carlson for like 4 minutes. And those are the only mainstream I've done. And I will not do any mainstream. Every time I come on these kind of podcasts, because I looked at a little bit of stuff, and I actually looked up the wrong person first. But I looked stuff up and I see if somebody's a good person and if they're putting out pretty good information. And then I say, yeah, I'll go on your show. But as mainstream media, I just keep saying no, not doing it. Unless you
That's
just give
wise.
me my ability just to speak and don't interrupt me. And Tucker was kind enough that he did that. If you look at the Tucker Carlson show that I did a week ago, he just lets me talk. And then when I finish, he says, wow, good point. And then he goes on to his next thing. So he was very respectful for that way that he let me speak. And the message that I was trying to give on Tucker was, we're all people. We all struggle. The main message is we all struggle. We all have issues. And I have my issues. And you have your issues, and everyone. So why would you want to pile on top of somebody else's issues? Or why would you want to take your issues and shove them on top of somebody else to make their issues even tougher and mess with their life? And so I'm saying that to all those folks on both sides of the aisle. That's all you're doing. Everybody on the right has problems. Everybody on the left has problems. Why do you keep piling more on top of each other? I don't understand that. People need to start waking up and look at your neighbor and look at the folks living in Canada and Mexico and all around us. We think that we're some kind of great nation that we can do whatever we want and forget about those guys north, forget about those guys south. They're our neighbors. We're the same. And then I say, look across the pond at Europe. Look at Russia, Ukraine, everything. We're all neighbors. This is a really small planet. So my whole message is just wake up. Start being nice to each other. Stop piling on. We have enough problems, I know I spoke for a long time, but I live this every day because my heart hurts right now to see where our country's going and to see where the world is going. We need to do something. People need to wake up and chill out, have some compassion, and go talk to your neighbor in person. Don't Facebook them. Don't Instagram them and all that tweeting stuff. Walk next door and talk to your neighbor. Start speaking face to face, or you're never going to get true answers. We got to start conversing.
I like that. I like that a lot.
That's about it.
I completely agree. Well, that was a very good introduction. I have a bunch of prepared questions for you, but I thought one of them is, what are your views on whether? Okay, so I don't know that much about gender dysphoria, to tell you the truth.
I don't either.
Nobody does. Depression.
That's real. That's what I'm trying to say is nobody does.
Yeah, okay.
Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing surgery on these kids. If we knew what gender identity disorder was, we really knew what it was, we wouldn't be doing surgery on kids. We'd be digging in there and looking at the underlying causes. We'd be looking at anxiety, at depression, at a myriad of other things that could add up to gender identity disorder. We got to look at childhood trauma. We got to look at generational trauma is one of the ones that we keep missing.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things. So the fact is, those psychologists that think they know, because they went to surgery, they don't know. So if you really want to know what it is, you need to speak to some other folks, I think. Talk to some philosophers or maybe some religious people, because at least they're trying,
Yeah, I like that idea of generational trauma too. That's something I kind of was like, nah, that's kind of hippy dippy. But then I started looking at my family and there's alcoholism on one side, and I know my great grandpa was dropped off on a doorstep when he was a baby. And then these kind of things do modify your behavior, and then you teach your kids those behaviors that are modified. So there really is something to that generational trauma.
100%. I could go into that one pretty deep because I've passed on my own generational trauma. I had 2 boys, and unfortunately, some of the things that I've learned to stop doing, now, I did some of that to my 2 boys, and
that's my worst
it breaks
nightmare.
my heart.
Yeah, I saw, so I have a 5-year-old girl, And I noticed, and I was quite ill for most of my life. I had very, very crippling depression and arthritis, and I noticed some of the behaviors I did when she was really little, and I tried to stop myself as soon as I noticed myself doing them and her mimicking them. I was like, oh no, 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 no! I don't want some of these behaviors passed on. I need to get myself sorted out right now. Yeah.
That's awesome. You broke the cycle. That's awesome.
Well, hopefully, I don't know. I'm sure I passed on plenty of problems, but at least I think I got some under control. Yeah. So, what do you think? Say you have a kid who's experiencing gender dysphoria. What should a parent do?
You do what parents do. You love them. You talk to them. You have a lot of conversations. And then if there's conversations that get beyond you, you find a good counselor. Even though I'm giving a lot of crap to counselors and all that, there's some amazing counselors out there. One of my professors actually at the university I was going to is an amazing counselor. And I would go to him every day. And he's a childhood counselor. He does a lot with youth. And Dr. Curtin. And you need to find someone like that, someone who's like open-minded and doesn't have an agenda, doesn't have a narrative, doesn't have no push, because it has to be a very open dialogue and just let them speak. And you'll want to do individual, but you're going to also want to do group with your child, because I think that's important, because you should be able to know all the stuff that's going on and be able, because you're with your kid more than that 1 hour session with the counselor. So you should kind of know what's going on so that you can continue when you're home. Now, it's not, you're going to let your kid be a kid, but you're not going to force the kid one way or the other. Surgery is definitely not the answer, because this is it's much more internal than it's external. And an external solution for anyone, is going to be an issue. And when I talk about gender identity disorder, I'm also talking about women and men who do the very far out gender surgeries that they do. When they do the massive breast augmentation, or you have guys putting these huge calves in their legs. The guys that have really big upper bodies, but they have chicken legs. So they add calves on. You don't think that's gender identity disorder? Now, the good part is those gender identities are in line with their physical sex. And so it's easy to cover up. It's easy to hide. It's easy. Everybody accepts it. And the problem in society right now, thanks to the Kardashians and all the other crap, it's like way over the top. So for women and the female gender identity disorder, so it's aligned, it's parallel. What are they doing? If you look at those magazines and look where the Kardashians are going and all those other people, it's almost it's like mimicking, real women, and you know what I mean? And I think men do the same thing, which they all want to be like Arnold Schwarzenegger or all the other folks who are, way over the top, bodybuilders and all that. But they can't do it because physically not everyone can do that. Physically, not every woman is going to be, looking like a Marilyn Monroe hourglass figure and everything else. It's just not possible. We're all different shapes and sizes, and we should be proud of that. Whenever they talk about diversity, it just cracks me up that they miss the whole point of diversity. They want diversity, but they want everybody to be the same in their diversity. If they wanted to invite somebody to talk about diversity in a LGBTQ environment, I would be the most diverse person that they would ever meet, because I'm transgender. I have gender identity disorder. So I'm still in your group, and I was a Navy SEAL, and I was surgery and no surgery and detransition, all the other stuff. You're not going to find a more diverse character, but they kick me out. They don't want diversity. They want diversity as long as it lines up with their agenda. And then when you start talking about inclusion, is a whole nother thing. I don't know if they really know DE&I, if they really understand what inclusion really means. There's a lot of these little issues that seem to be exacerbating and just going in one direction towards the same slippery slope. It seems like everything keeps aiming at the same thing to get rid of all the whites, and then we're gone. That's what it seems to me, and I don't get it. That's what they're teaching in universities. Every time I go to DE&I, if you're not, if you're white, male, and especially like Christian and middle class or anything else, you're not allowed. You're excluded. How is that diversity? I don't get that. I mean, I'm
Yeah, it's
rambling on a whole
very
bunch of different
strange.
things, but
No.
all of this it all adds up together. And if we had enough time, it all comes together. It's all the same stuff. It's taking words, it's taking labels, it's taking all the stuff, and it's changing them to meet narratives. It's changing everything to meet an agenda. Rather than taking a word, it means this, and it's like, well, that word means that. Well, maybe we need to invent another word, or like even to sports. You have male and female sports for reasons, you know? If I was to go in and fight UFC when I was supposedly transgender, and I'd fought UFC when I was claiming, a female, which I never really did. I was like, being women and being female was different in the way I saw the whole thing. So if I fought UFC during that time period when they would have let me, do you think I would have just crushed everybody? I mean, I probably would have gotten beat. There's some tough ladies out there, but I mean, the power and the ability that I would have that barely any women would ever have because of the testosterone going through my body for, 40 something years, and just the sinew strength and the ligament connections, the way I'm built, I would crush all those women. And I just thought that would be unfair, just like ridiculous. So I never even entertained the idea that I would ever compete against women in anything. They even said that I could apply for these special grants and things, these women grants. And I was like, no. And I said, that doesn't even make any sense. So I did kind of put myself, whether most people have noticed it or not, I don't mean if anybody noticed it, but I had myself in kind of a different class. I did not want to, I did kind of mess up a little bit where I did encroach a lot on a women's territory. So I wouldn't say I didn't. That was a huge mistake, and I admit that. But there were definitely areas that I would never think to ever cross those lines. And right now, all the lines are crossed, and there are no boundaries. And now they're actually changing definitions of words. How does that make sense?
Who do you think, like you said, it's part of a bigger agenda. Do you think this is coming from something external, or is this just people making things crazy within America?
Within America, it's for a while I keep pointing at Sweden, and it's been a couple of years I've been talking about the Netherlands, Sweden, and Scandinavian countries who are very far in front of this entire transgender curve and the transgender surgery curve especially. And about a year ago, I think they started doing this really big study, and it's called the J curve, and it's in Sweden. And it's the gender surgery or gender identity J curve. And you can look it up, Google it. But they had this, the curve went, woo, and it shot way up. And it looked like a J. I mean, bam. It was a 1,500% increase in teenagers identifying as transgender or non-binary. 1,500% increase. Does that sound like a popular or a fad or something? Does that sound like somebody's pushing it, or it became so popular that the wave kind of picked up a lot of people? Well, that's what Sweden found out. And so Sweden they didn't put a halt to it, but they said, hey, we need some studies. We need to figure this out. So Sweden reacted, the government of Sweden and people there, they went up in arms. They were like, what's going on? This doesn't seem right. And they did. The curve now goes way up, and now it starts going way back down.
Oh, wow.
And who knows where it's going to go, but they corrected it. And the biggest thing I keep talking about is if somebody has GID, and they have, they're transgender and they want to do surgeries, and you're over 18 or you're over whatever age, rock on, do your thing and have a great life. I congratulate you. The thing is, if it's teenagers and you see this 1,500%, uptake in this going on, there's a lot of people getting swept up inside of that tidal wave. And when those folks that are in that tidal wave, when they graduate high school, when it's all over, and they no longer have that peer pressure, they no longer have all those hormones running through bodies and it's all wild. High school. High school's just, it's one of those times that nobody wants to redo it. It's crazy. Yeah. So all those folks that get swept up in this tidal wave, when the tidal wave is over, when you're done with high school and you're sitting there 22 years old and you have a job, you start really thinking, all those folks that got wrapped up in that tidal wave, what's going to happen to them? And so they keep saying they care about trans kids, they care about trans kids. They keep saying how much they care. Do they care about those people that are getting swept up? Do they care about the people that find out that this wasn't really me because I had boom, 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 boom. They start going down the line of other things. Or they had really intense gender identity disorder because of all of these reasons. Or all my friends were trans, so it was easier. That's kids. That's how kids talk. They do. when they start really thinking about it, when they're 22, 23, 30 years old, what happens to them? Now, for me, when I say I care about the kids, I care about all the kids. I care about those kids that have gender identity disorder, the gender dysphoria, and I care about the ones that have it really bad that might end up having to have surgery later in life. I care about them, and I want you to be healthy. I want you to be happy. I also care about the ones that the transgender community does not care about. I care about the ones, the trans kids that they say are trans kids. I care about the ones that you do not care about. The ones that when they're 22 years old that found out they made a mistake. I care about them. And those are the ones, if you start looking at the rates of taking their own lives, of everything else that's going on. This is the problem that nobody wants to talk about. And I feel like I'm the only one talking about this. And I know when I was on Robbie Starbuck, I was very emotional. And I was very, very lucky that my fiance Courtney was there with me, because she's an academic and she goes right into the academics of it, and I'm very passionate. I go, yeah, and then she goes, dude. She just starts going right through it, and so she's magnificent when it comes to that, to just talk me down a little bit and make me not be so passionate. But I do want you to understand that I do care about all those kids who have gender dysphoria and want to do surgery later in life, all for it, but follow the guidelines. And right now, the guidelines, I've been talking about this again for like a year, is the Harry Benjamin protocols. And they started canceling all the stuff out, and they went to WPATH. And the WPATH, I said a long time ago, has been, it's corrupted. It's gone to the point where it's a check in a box. And then the other part is that everybody knows how to game the system. So they have coaches for transgender kids now. And so if you're a trans kid and your parents don't agree with what you're going on, they can hide it and do all the stuff, and you'll be assigned a coach. You'll be assigned an older transgender person to sit right there with you and give you the words. Now, does that sound good? What does that sound like to you? I mean, that sounds kind of like, I don't know, I've known some religions in the past that used to do that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
And then they all end up drinking Kool-Aid, They don't last very long because the whole thing falls apart because it's a house of cards, and they're building a huge house of cards that's worldwide. And I don't want the rest of the world to look at America that we're all doing this, because I think it's a very, very small number of Americans. And I don't want you to look at all the transgender people. The older transgender people that I know have been calling me and writing me notes and saying, yeah, you're right about this, this, and this, and this, but this is, and I'm like, well, I was right about a lot. And I said, can you keep digging and look at more of it? And I said, yeah, we want to. A lot of transgender people, the older transgender people that I know are a little upset. I think it's more of an activist problem. I think when you get these people in there who are being paid and they're activists, and most of them have good hearts and they want to help. But there comes a time when they're activists, and I don't know if that's a word, but activizing, I don't know, when they're doing it so hardcore and they're so wrapped up to it, and that becomes their entire identity. So their identity is no longer human. Their identity is no longer American. Their identity probably isn't even transgender anymore. Their identity is an activist. And all they're trying to do is recruit and get their side of the story out, and then make sure that any other part of the story is as quiet as possible. And for me, there's a guy named Goebbels that did that really well. Ooh. I mean, it's propaganda. And a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about is, I can tie it into politics and religion and all kinds of things. All the failed states and all the failed religions and all the failed everything that you see start out with a lot of good intentions, even cults. And fiance Courtney, she's a cult expert. That's one of the things she studied, and she's been coaching me through a lot of this. And I'm just like, it blows my mind when I start seeing the parallels. And if somebody would write a paper on this as a PhD thesis, maybe she should do it. But the I keep finding things that line up, and it's horrible. And if you're a kid, you have no chance. And at least I had a chance. When I was a kid, I grew up and I was a kid, and I hid a lot of stuff. And then I finally started after I retired, and then and now I look back on my life, and I still cannot pinpoint the exact time, and I can't pinpoint any like one event. I think it's like the death of 1,000 cuts. It was just a whole bunch of little things all adding up, and then finally it broke. And I think that happens with a lot of folks. If you're not taking care of the small things, all those small things will add up to really big later in life. And I think that's the value of having a good coach or a mentor or that good counselor I'm talking about. Or even if you had a parent or a sibling or somebody you can speak to. We all need to talk to somebody because none of us are right. None of us know everything. We need to go out there and investigate and have dialogues and speak. And I'm speaking way too much. I'm sorry. I think I'm answering most of your questions.
No,
I
that's
just
why.
realized
That's
I said,
why
no,
you're
I'm talking too much.
no. That's why you're on here. I think the lack of communication could easily be contributing to just mental illness as a whole. I know that if I like during COVID, and there have been periods of time where I've been isolated in my life, and like I don't stay sane, for sure. Like for sure, you need to be able to talk out loud to somebody about what's going on around you to make sure it's real, I think.
Well, if you think about prisons and you think about like wartime when we have somebody in a POW camp or something, what's like the worst punishment you can give somebody? Isolation. You put them in isolation, and after a while, the person's going to break. They're going to give up the information, or they're just going to go in. It really does. It affects you heavily. We are social creatures. We have to have that social, everything, So, yeah, isolation is terrible.
Yeah. And I wonder how much, especially younger generations now with spending a lot of time on TikTok and just being fed, certain things through TikTok and not hanging out with their friends or going outside. I don't know what kids do now, but I don't know if they go outside and play in the streets like they used to, like even I did when I grew up. That's got to be isolating too. Even though you have social media and friends on social media, it's
They're
not
not
real.
friends.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love what you said. The social media is 100% isolation. If all you do is look at your phone, you're not with anybody. You're with the digits.
Yeah.
We need to go back to an analog world. And I've been going around my entire house, LEDs, everything, and I'm going back to analog. I don't want anything digital in my life. If it's not analog, I don't want it. And I count that for people too. There are some very digital people out there. They run on computer programs. And that's like, there's a book I read called it's the chimp brain paradox. And most people in this day and age, because of the society we're living in, they're all digital. They're not even living on a human way. And humans are analog. We run on analog everything, They're digital. They're run on computer programs. It's a yes and no world for them. I hate you, I love you, and it's not everything. It's the same problem.
Yeah. That definitely contributes. I worry about that for myself too. I have a podcast, so I spend a lot of, and I have a lot online, a brand, and I help my dad with his online, I guess you could call it a brand. And so I spend all my time on a computer, but then I section off periods of the day because I have a 5-year-old. So I section off where I'm like, okay, got to put my phone down. You've got the red light glasses.
Do you do the blue
too.
blockers?
I do. I don't have them here, but I definitely
better do blue
I should
blockers.
wear them more.
All the time. Every time you're on a computer, you better do blue blockers. Because there's the frequency of the blue light that's coming out of here is very, very dangerous.
Yeah, no, I can feel it.
It's bad. So do the blue blockers when you're on a computer, especially if you're on it every day.
Yeah, I should do that more. I have I changed my phone cover, so my phone kind of takes away all the blue light. So at least I do that. But I used to be better with the blue blockers.
Awesome.
Yeah, I dropped it. Do you have anything to say to kids who are, and I feel like this happens a lot, especially in probably more liberal areas of the country, if they're having gender dysphoria and they're in school and they're being encouraged to do surgery and told, hey, the suicide risk is higher, but if you do the surgery, your suicide risk will drop. Do you have anything to say to kids considering surgery?
I would say something kind of funny, and this would be pointed more at the parents, would be your kid's chosen name of what the kid wants to be called. And I mean, when I was a kid, what would be like a silly name that some kid wanted to be called when they were kids? Call me Fire Truck, I'm not saying I want to be a fire truck. Or just
Scarlett's
a silly name.
Pocahontas.
Okay, Pocahontas. So,
yeah.
So what you should do is have your kid saying, hey, let's just tattoo Pocahontas across your forehead and just have that for a while, because that's what you want to be. You want to be Pocahontas. Let's just tattoo you for a while. But do it like Hannah or something, and then just have like this giant Pocahontas, or something across your face so everybody sees it every second, and then we'll see what happens, And it would be a permanent tattoo, and then you let them know the permanence of it, What if you had a permanent tattoo across your face with something like just big label, so that every time somebody saw you, they saw that giant label across your face, and it was the only thing they could really see, and then see how you feel, see how people treat you, see how it all fits in, and then what do you feel about that? And just the conversation alone would be, well, a permanent tattoo across my face, why would I want to do that? Well, I mean, it's the same thing, it's something that's very permanent, and it's right there, it's in front of everybody, and it's something that's really hard to change. So if you got like a giant tattoo across your face, to remove tattoo is very painful, and it takes a long time and a lot of money, and it's the same thing as that. So for me, I did get breast augmentation, and that was also just, I don't know what happened. And that was another thing that I'm trying to find out what I did wrong as far as me needing that for me to be fulfilled in whatever, intellectual or mental health reason. And at the time it seemed right. But as I look back on it, it was like, I don't know what I did. And then, so they're doing a permanent surgery to their bodies that they're not going to change very easily. It's very difficult to change, very painful. And some of the changes, Chloe Cole, I bring her up because she's one of the only public, younger transgender people that
she
had
just
surgery.
talked to Dad.
So,
Dad
good.
called me Dad called me today, and I said, oh yeah, I really want to get Chloe Cole out. It's like, oh, who's Chloe Cole? And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'm talking to Chris Beck today. So yeah.
Well, she's an excellent example, and I don't bring up any other ones, but there's hundreds. And the thing is like they're still young and they don't want to be in the news. Chloe is taking a lot of heavy hits, and I hope they don't use her and abuse her like they did me on CNN. And she's still very young, and I was an adult when I got used in kind of that machine of mainstream media. And I mean, you've been on enough shows and things that it's a machine. It's entertainment. And they're going to use you up as much as they can. Hey, go on this show, go on this show, go on this show. And they're doing that to Chloe. And I do hope if Chloe hears this, take a break. I did all those news shows, and if you think you're going to get something out of it, you're not. They're getting something out of it. It's not going to be a moneymaker unless there's some way for you to move it into that. But it's just news. They just want to chew you up, entertainment, and then you're done. And I feel bad that she's just so young and they're doing that to her. I hope somebody's helping her out and just talking to her and saying, hey, yeah, we'll do that one and not that one. Start being very selective. That would be a good choice. But for parents, like I said, I was being a little bit tongue-in-cheek about the tattoo thing, but I'm being very serious too. When you do those surgeries, it's like something on your face. It's like right there, all of it. Everybody sees it. Everybody sees you. You see all them, and you have to feel it all the time. Every time you look in the mirror, you're going to feel it. Now, you're going to feel it really good. You're going to love it. But what happens when you don't love it, and then you can't change it? That's what I'm saying. It's just so permanent and so right there. And the other thing is they talk about gender being fluid. They talk about non-binary. They talk about these 50 something, or is it 80 now, genders and all this stuff. So why are all the surgeries only binary? And that was something I ask people all the time. It's like, well, can I have a surgery that's non-binary? Well, there is not one. So what's non-binary? Oh, it's fashion. Oh, okay. So now we understand non-binary. So I can put on clothing and be non-binary? Oh, yeah, you're good. Yeah, if you're a girl, just wear jeans and a cowboy hat and you're non-binary. Well, no, that doesn't make any sense. So there's just so much stuff, and I know I'm at the point right now, and I think the whole world is getting really close to that point where I'm just tired of it. I don't want to talk about this anymore. I want it to be over. It's just like the end of the fourth quarter, and it's a tie game, and it's just everybody's tired, and then everybody's crying about everything that everybody's dying, and it's like I don't buy that. I buy the thing that somebody's life is in danger if they're not able to talk to somebody. So if it's a kid that's in school and they start becoming transgender at school, and then the parents find out about it, the parents are going to be pretty angry. And the parents are going to say no. I mean, any parent would, wouldn't they? I just got tricked and my kid comes home and this is what's going on. Well, let's just hold the horses, stop right here, and let's go talk to somebody. And then that kid gets so upset that they move out, they become homeless, and then what happens after that? So there's also a lot going on where I want parents to know that if your child does this, and they even do it behind your back, it's your child, and you can still talk to them and you can work this out, Go to some counseling, read about the Harry Benjamin protocols, read about a lot of the other stuff. There's hundreds of books out there that could be very, very educational to people on both sides of the aisle. And one of those books, I think it was called Born in the Right Body. There's a bunch of books out there. I could probably send you a list of books that are very, very interesting. That if you start reading these stories, and these are actual stories in this one book by a whole bunch of transgender people who have detrans, or transgender people who are still trans. It's a mix up of stories, and a lot of women too, feminists and anti-feminists and all kinds of people. So you try to collect the information from all sides of the story, read some different books. Don't just read the one book that you get from, that drag queen at the library. That book probably isn't going to be very two-sided. It's going to be a very one-sided book. And that's a problem. I don't want all these parents, and I don't want all these kids to only get one side of the story. And that's one of the biggest reasons, it's probably the biggest reason, I even came out and started speaking out.
Yeah.
And I know Chloe's doing a great job, and I don't do very many of these because I just want to have enough of a voice from some of the elder trans people who have been there before, and I have a little bit of a name, that I just want you to know that my voice is just backing up Chloe to make sure that people listen to her and to make sure that she's taken care of the way all those other kids need to be taken care of. Listen to them, find out what's going on, find out why the surgery happened and who authorized it, where it was going, what was the diagnosis, and I'll go through the entire DSM if I have to with each one of these kids to find out what was going on, because they're missing something. Something is missing, and I just want to lend my voice right now that I am here. I am not transgender by the ideology that currently exists. I have what they used to call gender identity disorder, and unfortunately for me, it's a cross identity, which causes a lot of issues. They're not problems or challenges. It does help in a few different ways. My fashion sense is fabulous, I'm just kidding. I have to have some levity here because this stuff is just so like harsh, man. There are things that I know where I'm different, that I do think a little bit differently. I don't think like a woman, but I do think, and it starts turning into stereotypes if I start doing that. But there are some things that I do and I act like that I think would be part of that cross identity type of a thing. And I think if we start really looking at ourselves as humans and people start being honest with themselves, you're going to find that we all have a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing is like maybe I let mine affect me a lot more for whatever reasons, And if you have those guys who are lifting weights and they have the chicken legs and they're putting those giant calves in, you have identity disorder. You're just lucky it's parallel with your own, your birth sex, there's a lot we need to work on. And the only way we're going to be able to get through this is for people to start being honest. For people to start being honest with yourselves, honest with your vocabulary, with the words you use, and being precise with those words. And then just speaking to each other in a truthful manner. Not your dialogue, not your narrative, not your agenda where you're trying to do something for yourself. Do you think I gain anything from doing this? The only thing I gain is a whole bunch of death threats.
Yeah.
Oof. And I'm honest about that. I get death threats. I don't make a cent from doing any of this stuff. And I will never make a cent from any of this stuff because I think that would be kind of gross. I'm going to live my life and I'll give speeches, I give talks like your dad does, but not his level. Holy cow. But I do get invited to give speeches at corporations. And I talk about diversity and inclusion. I talk about the SEAL teams. I give them SEAL team stories about things that I learned like the really hard way. It was like this one time, it was like in the middle of this compound and we were going after this guy. And there's a baby crib right in the middle of this, like we're fighting. And I ran in the middle of it and got this baby out of the crib. And I was like, I talk about that kind of a story. And then I try to relate it, that every day you're walking down the street, you have a chance to save somebody's life. And I said, it's not going to be in a firefight and it's a baby in a country and all the craziness that I had to deal with. But every day, if you start observing, you're going to see people in stress. You're going to see people in trouble. And if you just give them a kind word, if you give them a smile, when they go home that night, they might have a little different outlook on life. And that saved a life with a simple smile. And I've been talking about giving people smiles and trying to help in this little way to save people's lives for years and years. And I wish people would start doing that. I was walking around Costco just the other day, doing that pre-Christmas shopping. That was just chaos. But the whole day, I knew it was a super stressful day. And Courtney and I were here also, and we were just walking around, and we made it an effort. We made it an effort to greet everyone we saw if they were, open at that. And we were greeting people left and right, saying, "Merry Christmas, how you doing?" And just being funny and jokey with everybody. And you wouldn't believe the responses we got. It was like people were stopping their shopping and just saying, "What's going on? Hi, how you doing? You're having a wonderful day." And we just started talking. And that was a simple thing, that we were trying to take one of the most stressful shopping days, just everybody's panicking, and the parking lot was chaos. If people would just slow down, have a smile, a short conversation, we'd maybe took 10 extra minutes out of the entire Costco run, 15 minutes out of our lives to maybe save a dozen lives, because now they're not stressed. They're not doing this. They're not going home going, "We couldn't buy that Chinese rubber dog shit that we always wanted." They're out there running around trying to consume this crap. And it's like, everybody's just frustrated. And it's like, we're just buying groceries and stuff, and everybody's buying all this stuff. We need to get all of our regular stuff that we can't buy on a farm or grow on a farm.
Yeah.
But it's just, people need to slow down. People need to start having conversations, and stop buying all that rubber junk, the plastic junk that lasts 2 days and then you throw it away. Go analog if you want to really live.
I feel that. I just got sent, I feel like you would like this. I got sent tallow soap. So it's just
nice.
saponified tallow.
Yep.
And then there's moisturizer. I'll
awesome.
shoot you over. I'll tell you what the company is. It's very nice,
Cool.
but it's the same kind of, it reminds me, I was like, this is the hippiest thing I've ever seen. But
That's
it's kind of
awesome.
nice. And we're so
we make
surrounded
soap, so
by,
yeah.
like you said, blue
Yep.
lights and social media and ideology.
We try to make all that stuff ourselves. We don't really need to buy that stuff.
Yeah, no, that's very true. That's very true. Okay, let's see. Okay, so you've been going on these podcasts. Who are you getting death threats from? That's horrifying. That's got to be stressful.
No, I mean, it's not that stressful.
I guess
I'm kind of used to it.
you have
by now.
experience with stress.
Yeah. Well, here's this thing that I see, and that's why I know it'll probably happen, but I'm not worried about it. At the same time, even when I came out in 2014, 13, 14, whatever it was, I got death threats back then, and it was from the other side. I mean, I'd get death threats from like old military buddies, pretty much, saying, if you come anywhere near me, I'm going to beat the shit out of you. Oh, shoot. I just cursed. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Oh, I said that word earlier. God, I don't do that normally. But, I'm not worried about it, because I wear the armor of God, and it can be whatever God that you pray to or you believe in or whatever. I know my God. And it's the knowledge that I'm on the right side. It's the knowledge that with everything I read and all the books that I read, and I have stacks of books that I'm trying to go through to try to gain some insight into, and I'm a lot the Bible, of course, but I'm Christian, so of course the Bible. But
Yeah,
I read
me too.
everything else too. And good. Well, I don't have to say good. What are you supposed to say? It's like, hey, welcome aboard. Hey, wow, we're the club. But but Christians don't gang up like that. It's just, hey, this is what I believe. And I think some of the best Christians I've ever met, we don't really go to church, because most of those churches are, the guys in the pulpit are collecting too much money when they have these big houses and all this other stuff. That's not my kind of church. My church is out there in the woods by myself, reading amongst the trees, or one or two people, and we just go through lessons. That's the church that Jesus kept talking about, that we totally missed the point. He brought us that church. He gave it to us. I started doing like a sermon. I apologize. But the reason I don't worry about that, and I wear that armor of God, is because I'm held fast to my beliefs. I know my beliefs now. I lost them for a long time. I lost my way. I felt like it was like, in some ways I felt like kind of like Saul in a way. Then I felt a little bit like Job, and I felt like, now I get the Technicolor dream coat. I went through all of these things where I had to go through these really hardships. I had to figure some things out, and I was tested greatly. And I passed a lot of the tests. There are some of those tests that I think I failed, that I'm still working on, and I'm trying to do better. And for me to be able to even say that, hey, there's the cat back there. For me to be able to say that I am held steadfast in my beliefs, and I read through there, and it's grounded in morality, it's grounded in truth, it's grounded in ethical decisions and all kinds of things, you know. And if you don't have that, then you're a ship out in the ocean with no rudder, you know. And people will make fun of Christians and they'll make fun of me reading the Bible, you know, because I do it just if I'm waiting somewhere. I always have my little pocket Bible. It's a motorcycle club Bible. It has a little motorcycle on it, says Biker's Bible. And it's one I carried around with me for a long time. And then I stopped. And I wish I would have kept doing that, because I think that's what really grounded me. But I just pull it out and I start reading it. And, you know, and people look at me and they scoff. It's almost like, Christians. It's like they say with white people, white people, Christians. It's like, why? You know, why can't I have my belief? You know, it's my belief. It's my personal belief. I'm not saying anything to anybody else because I'm standing there reading the Bible. I'm sitting there in the waiting room reading the Bible. It does nothing to you, you know? They just arrested some lady. It was like in Canada. She was standing outside of an abortion clinic.
I saw that. No, I don't think that was Canada. I think that was the UK.
Oh, it was UK. Yeah, it was the UK.
Yeah.
Yeah. But she was standing there just silently, not saying a word. And then they said, do you know where you're standing? She said, yeah, this is an abortion clinic. Well, what are you doing? She says, I'm just standing here minding my business. And they were like, are you praying? She says, yes. I said, well, if they ask me that, I pray all the time. You know, I pray with every breath I take, you know. And if you work on, there's this breathing technique. There's this, these deep air breathers, and it's a really neat thing. But if you think about the name of God, and in the old Judean way was Yahweh, every breath you take is speaking the words of God. Yahweh. When you're breathing, you're saying the words of God.
Oh, that's cool.
That's on purpose. You know?
Oh, I haven't heard
purposeful.
that before. That's cool.
So, yeah. And so I purposely breathe the name of God with every breath I take. You know? And you're going to tell me that now if I go anywhere near an abortion clinic and I'm breathing, they're going to arrest me? You know, come on. The person was just standing there. What are they doing? Not threatening me, anybody, not talking to anybody, not doing it, just standing there. So how far are they going to push this? That's the question I have. Mm-hmm. Now, I do think that that's the danger, you know, and that's the danger to themselves. So this entire movement that's pushing so hard, they're going to push it so hard and it's going to go so far that there's going to be backlash. And the backlash is going to be as much or probably even more brutal than what you're doing to everyone right now. And so, it's not a threat. It's not even a warning. It's just a study of history. And when I study history, you see it all the time. You know, you see that the oppressed become the oppressors. And if you have a whole group of people right now that are policing language, that they're arresting people for standing around, that they're arresting people because they used the wrong pronoun, you know, who's being oppressed? That every corporation around the world, every Fortune 100 company, every Fortune 500 company, every company around the earth has a rainbow flag and has this, and they raise them on the flagpoles, and they're having parades and everything. I don't see that for Christians, you know. I don't see that for a lot of groups of people, you know. So you're not oppressed. I really wish that they would stop saying they're oppressed, because they can do everything that anyone can do. Do you think the oppression, or do you think the violence that's happening is caused because you have drag queens dancing half naked in front of young kids? Do you think the oppression is happening because you have, you know, young kids like Chloe Cole, who had a double mastectomy at like 15 or 16 years old? Oh. And there's the youngest case I've ever heard of, which I'll send. Well, I can't send you the data, but it was 10 years old. You know, how are you doing surgery on a 10-year-old?
So,
you know,
how do you? What do you think this? Yeah, what do you think the steps are that allows surgery to happen with kids under, say, 16? Like, what are they diagnosed with? How is that, like a 10-year-old, you said? Even a 14-year-old, like, what happens? Do they say that I'm in such psychological torment that this is the only thing that's going to fix me?
What they use, it's a tactic that they've been using. They've been using it for a long time. That they'll tell the parent, you can have a live son or a dead daughter, and that would be for like a trans. And the majority of this movement really going on right now are girls, are little girls.
Mm-hmm.
And so they say you can have a dead little girl or a live trans boy, and that's the choice they're given, and that's a false choice. You know, I mean, talk about God. It's a logic trap it's a classic logic trap. You know. It just doesn't make any sense. It's not true. But that's a choice if you have a PhD psychologist or a doctor or somebody else talking to a parent, and the parents aren't trained, and the parents don't know, and the parents love their kid, and the parents want their kid to be happy and alive. If you're given that choice as a parent and you don't know, what are you going to do? You know? And then the kids, they don't really know. What did you know when you were 12 years old? What did you know when you were 15? All of you parents out there, all of you doctors, all you adults, look back when you were 15. What were you doing? Geez, if I told you what I was doing, we were out there riding pigs and being idiots and building rafts. And it was like, we're kids. We didn't know. So to do this, it's appalling that this has gone this far. And I keep saying the same thing. And I know if you listen to all the words I said, if somebody actually listens to all this, they're going to be able to pick this apart, and there's all kinds of hate. You can pick out little pieces and make me sound really horrible. But I love all those kids. I want them to be happy. In the grand scheme of things, the time you're talking about for them during that 2 or 3 years of junior high and going into high school or whatever, when they're going through all that, we all went through it. We all had those thoughts. We all had it's just wild, but we have to slow them down. You know, they're kids.
Yeah. I don't think my brain grew in. Like, I think I could remember a switch when I was about 22 to 23. Like, it wasn't even 18. It was 22 to 23. And I can remember thinking, oh, I can just think long term now, or I understand the repercussions of my actions, right? Because I didn't understand, I just didn't have the thought of repercussions of my actions. Not really. And then sometime between the age of 22 and 23, it switched over. And I was like, oh, okay. I think my brain just fully grew in.
Well, I mean, there's a whole bunch of tests that you do in psychology. And one of the classic tests is a peekaboo test. So there's an age, and I think it's 4 years old is when they get rid of that one thing. It's their permanence. And so, you know, when you put your peekaboo, and like when you cover your eyes up, the kids are like, they're like, really, where'd you go? Because they don't, and if you put an object behind something and you say, where is it now? If they don't see it, it's not there. I think that lasts to like 4 years old. And then there's a whole other series of things. And if you study human development, it does it. It's all these little things are happening with your brain and how it's developing, you know? And so you're going to have a kid that's still kind of playing peekaboo and then start doing surgery on them. You know, it's just, that's what they're talking about. You know, it's just, it's utterly ridiculous. The psychological community, I hold them responsible. They could have stopped this, you know, and I also hold the leadership within the LGBTQ community. There's a ton of things I could talk about. I could talk about the double X male syndrome, which I think they actually erased it out of the books. It used to be a lot of data at, darn, what was that? There was a hospital. Darn, I'm sorry, I can't remember. There was a huge study, and it was all about the double X male syndrome and some other things. But
Double X. It would
have made it scientific.
What is that?
Well, it has to do with there's phenotypes and then genotypes, and then you have to do that. And then when you start going into all of this, it gets very confusing. But especially if they start crossing, and this does cross, it's very common. And so we have the genotype crossing with a phenotype, then you have to look at things differently. And it's actually chemical, and it's how it's everything, you know, and it's actually a scientific thing that they can study. But they don't want it to be science. Because if it's science, it's provable, and then it's only that person because here it is provable. And so they don't get to have the kind of wishy-washy feeling thing, you know, because right now, this entire movement, everything is based on feelings, you know. If you take almost the entire LGBTQ community, IA, I don't know how many more letters they've added. I think they just added 3 or 4 more letters. They have the little red thing on there for sex workers. Now they're talking about adding MAPS, minor attracted people, and a bunch of other stuff. And that's the problem too, is they just keep expanding it. So the expansion of this thing is going to who knows where. But this, I don't know, but these are things that if it's only a feeling and that makes me part of this group and makes me popular, I'm no longer isolated. I'm no longer picked on because now I have a powerful group, and everybody wants to be part of that team, It's either you want to be part of the football team, if you're a boy, the soccer team, the weightlifters, the maybe the pot smokers, the band guys. You want to be part of one of those groups. If you're all by yourself, it's really hard to survive, And so you want to join a group. And if you're that person that's just kind of, you fit in there, you're just going to join that group, That's my group. And then you're now set. And so people just need to start studying. And I can go into that, the genotypes, phenotypes. I think Courtney could do it way better than I could because she also studied this. And she gives me a clue on some of this stuff and I study it. And then I know about it, but I'm not going to be able to dig in as deep as an expert could. Mm-hmm. But I bet you there's a lot of folks out there right now that want to look it up. And I hope you do, And I want you to look at the science of it rather than the feeling of it. If all it took was a feeling for me to be a Navy SEAL, then what would that make us? I couldn't become a Navy SEAL because I felt like a Navy SEAL. It doesn't work that way, and nothing in life works that way. If I just feel like something,
nothing in life works that way.
The entire base of the entire transgender and especially non-binary is just based on feelings and fashion, and I fell in that trap. I think a lot of women are falling in that trap, and I hope people start opening their eyes up and look at that. It's a trap.
Well, hopefully you talking about it helps some people. I know from like having an autoimmune disorder myself, I thought it was very painful and I lost a lot of my life to that. And I felt like the only way that I could make up for that without being extremely angry, mostly at the medical community, was to stop other people from going through the same thing. So if I could help other people avoid that, then I could kind of like forgive the medical community.
Yeah.
For not.
I am very familiar with autoimmune diseases.
Yeah? Are you suffering from anything?
Not me. I think very close. Okay, it's okay. Courtney was walking through descent. Courtney has an autoimmune disease.
Oh no.
Alopecia universalis.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. You should. Well, we don't have to get this into this on the podcast, but she should give the diet I'm on a go. It's not a quack diet. It's what put myself into remission. And my dad had alopecia. He had alopecia. Yeah, he had alopecia. It went away though. He had it in his 30s. It went away. Okay. And then he had psoriasis and then gum disease and just various autoimmune symptoms. But I know people with alopecia have put themselves into remission.
Talk about somebody who has lived a life. If you have alopecia universalis, you lose all your hair. And I think that happened to her. She was 14 or 15 years old. So going right through the middle of like the most turmoil, like the craziest time. And talk about somebody who's strong though. Somebody who is strong of spirit and character and everything else. Like live a life like that when you're a kid like that. And she's had it the whole time now. So decades and decades and just everything. And when you have something like that, a lot of other things happen. So, and like I said, everyone suffers, just stop piling on,
A lot. Yeah. It's amazing how much people can suffer and you don't know. They just show up and keep doing their people thing. But yeah, I like that, trying to make people smile. If you want to have a great
conversation, though, get Courtney back on here because the women in gender studies and occult stuff and her alopecia and a bunch of other stuff, she just has so much that she could offer that I think you'd get a real kick out of.
Oh, that sounds like fun. Why did you decide to detransition? Was there something that happened?
No, there was nothing. Well, part of it was I started loving myself. I started really digging in and understanding the concept, understanding psychology. Like I said, I started going for a master's degree in mental health counseling, and I learned so much. And there's no way that anybody could learn what you need to know about psychology or counseling or mental health or anything if you don't take those courses. And barely anybody can take all those courses, or read all those books and really dig into it. So, and that's why we have to rely on the experts. but I didn't have that chance at the VA. The mental health counseling and psychology departments at the VA are just, it's not good. And so if you're looking for help, and for me, I'm living on my retirement and I don't have a lot, so I'm not going to be able to go hire somebody or do anything, you know? So I just started doing it myself. And that's one of the big reasons why I started going into the course.
Good for you.
I wanted to heal myself. I was tired of everything just seemed bad. I had pretty bad PTSD, traumatic brain injury from a lot of explosions. And then I had other stuff going on. I also had an opioid issue for a while there because they were pushing those things on us so bad. And once you start doing them, you do enough of them that you're going to get stuck. It's one of those things that if you take some of it and you keep doing it, you're going to get stuck. You're done. It's a terrible, terrible drug. So I had to heal myself. And then so I was doing that, and right in the middle of that, I met Courtney. And for the first time in my life, I truly fell in love. I found someone who loved me, and I loved her like 100%, like wholly. It was I never had that before, and I'll tell people who I was with before that I loved them, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't like that. There was something missing. And I think what was missing was that I wasn't healed myself. What was missing that I didn't love myself, And if you can't love yourself, how do you expect to love somebody else? And so in my healing through me going through these schools and all these courses and reading all these books, and then also me meeting, starting to love myself and then meeting someone else who was actually truly able to fall in love with, really started clicking in. And so that's been a couple of years now. And then if anybody noticed, I've been wearing flannel shirts all summer in 90-degree weather because I was trying to cover myself up and just kind of hide, and haven't worn makeup for a long time, or anything, And then I was just at the point where it was like a purge, like beyond belief. It was like, if anything even looked even slightly feminine, I would just throw it away or burn it because it didn't disgust me, but it made me remember my old self who was it was wrong. It made me remember the pitfalls I fell into about the self-hatred and the self-loathing. It made me fall in a pitfall about esteem, lack of esteem, or even ego comes into it, where you have to be pretty egotistical to think that you could do something better than somebody who was born the way they were born. You know what I'm saying? So there's all these things that I had to overcome. And I did that slowly. With Courtney's help, I was able to do it, much faster than I probably could have on my own. I probably couldn't have ever completed it on my own because it's very arduous. It's you looking deep inside of yourself and like really asking yourself the hard questions. Like all the questions you've asked me are all like, I asked myself some really hard questions, questions I probably could never repeat on the air. I might in person if it's just personal, but there's things that you have to dig through and really, really dig. And then you will start learning where you are, and you'll start learning who you are. And then you'll start falling in love with yourself, and I'm not saying that it sounds weird, but the way I see it is if I can look in a mirror when I wake up in the morning, and this is another thing I talk about when I'm giving speeches, is that how many of you all look in a mirror when you're brushing your teeth or shaving or whatever, putting on your makeup, and actually really look at yourself and just say, hey, you're a great person. I love you. How many people do that? I can do that now. I wasn't able to do that for a long time. So
can you do that now?
Myself. I do that now all the time.
Wow.
I say thank you to myself. I bless myself. I say, hey, I'm grateful. I'm blessed. I'm doing great. If I see a mirror, I say, hey, you're cool. We have to talk positive about ourselves. We have to start seeing ourselves as good people, as a beautiful person, as a loving person, and love yourself. If you don't have gratitude for yourself, you're not going to get very far, and that was all the things I had to learn on my own, and then finally with help, and I'm grateful that I had somebody that could help me like that. I think a lot of people are missing that. But just like when we were walking around Costco, I talked about it a little earlier, we were walking around just being friendly and just talking to people. And it was like we just made a whole bunch of friends, like in one day, just walking around talking to people. You know, if you change your attitude, you might find people changing their attitude back towards you, you know? And I think that's probably a really big lesson for a lot of folks that have that self-loathing or have that doubt about themselves, or they have a self-esteem problem. You know, you have to start with yourself first. You know, everybody's going to look at you the way you look at yourself. So change the way you look at yourself. Look in that mirror and tell yourself how cool you are, or how beautiful you are, or how much you love yourself. And then that's going to affect you. It's going to stick on you. And now when you walk out the front door, you're going to find people treating you differently. And when that starts happening, your outlook is going to change and your life will change.
Chris Beck, you are a beautiful person. That was really nice. No, that was really nice. It's like I talk to a lot of people, but I don't talk to many people that are just I don't like the word nice exactly. It's kind of I think it's kind of empty, but like kind, just
Yeah,
looking to make,
thank you. I appreciate
limit
that.
suffering everywhere because people are already suffer enough. There doesn't need to be any added suffering. That was really nice. Um, can I direct anybody anywhere? Do you have social media? Do you want people
Now,
to go read something?
I want everybody to look at the data in Sweden. I want you to look at
Yeah.
the Swedish, the gender J curve. You can type in any of those things and it's going to come up. And you'll see some studies from Pink News, but who writes Pink News? You'll see some studies from a lot of places that poo-poo the data and say it's all wrong. But look at who wrote those things. And then look at some of the scientific journals and look at some of the, and the same thing goes the other way. I can say, look at a bunch of the Christian articles about transgender stuff and you're going to see the same thing. There's propaganda from both sides. I'm not saying that Christians are being propaganda, but I am saying that there is propaganda. I want you to be aware of the propaganda. So what you have to do is you have to research it on your own, you know, look that up, you know, and look up the double X male syndrome, look up gender dysphoria, gender identity disorder rather than transgender, you know, and just open your minds. You know, I'm fine, you know, I'm going to be okay. I don't want anybody to follow me or do anything, or it doesn't matter. If you want to follow somebody, follow Chloe Cole. You know, I think she's doing a really good job and she's incredibly brave, you know, and I want her to do well. She's had a really rough life and I want her to do really well from now, you know. I want her to, she always talks about, you know, meeting someone and possibly having a family and, you know, bless her, you know, and I hope she finds that kind of happiness. You know, that's all I want people to do is, it's almost like the pay it forward thing, you know, but don't give me anything, you know, except your death threats if you really need to, you know, but don't, and even that, I just answer them, I say, hey, thanks a lot, you know, I get a lot of those.
That's the
But
most infuriating response you could give them.
but it's not even do that to infuriate them. I'm just like, hey, you know, thank you.
I'm
You know,
sure,
at least they're
sure.
getting their anger out. I want them to get the anger out on me. If they have to kill somebody, please do it. You know, come on, because I don't want them to do it to
No.
Chloe. I don't want them to do it to these kids or somebody that doesn't deserve it. You know, I've already been through the war, and I have a lot of scars. You know, and I doesn't matter to me. You know, but Chloe doesn't deserve that, and all those kids don't deserve that. So if you want to do something, you know, smile at somebody, give some kind words, you know, and just be nice, you know, and look at it from both sides. Please, all of y'all on the right and the left, look at both sides. You know, don't believe the propaganda. I don't care who you're listening to. On both sides, you're both listening to propaganda. You know, just look at both sides and see what's going on for real. And that's about it.
That sounds good. Thank you very much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you. It was wonderful.